In this video, I'd like to talk about the three labs that we've done most recently. Experiment 4.1 with the blue solid, experiment 4.3 with the two evaporating dishes, and experiment 4.4 with the temperature baths. In experiment 4.1, we kept dissolving a blue solid in water until no more blue solid would dissolve and it just accumulated on the bottom of a test tube. If you remember, we made an estimate as to the saturated concentration of that blue solid in water. If we wanted to be as precise as possible, we would have redone the experiment several times and honed in on the exact amount of blue solid we could add to water. Whereas in experiment 4.3, like in experiment 4.1, we found the saturated concentrations, or solubilities, of solids in water. But instead of adding a solute a little at a time, we evaporated water from saturated solutions. So experiments 4.1 and 4.3 are really two ways to do the same thing. Find the saturated concentration of solutions. Now remember, the saturated concentration is the same as solubility. This next graph looks a bit daunting at first, but it'll make sense in a little bit. This is the graph that appears in your chapter 4 textbook of your textbook, and the horizontal axis is temperature in degrees Celsius. The vertical axis is the solubility in grams per 100 cubic centimeters of water. And there are the solubility curves for three solutes in water listed on this graph. The yellow line at the bottom is sodium chloride. The blue line, that's most vertical, is potassium nitrate. And the magenta line is sodium nitrate. Now, in experiment 4.3, if you've analyzed your data on the spreadsheet, you probably noticed that one solid A, was a lot less soluble than the solid B. And I've circled the points of interest on this graph. Experiment 4.3 was conducted at room temperature, so the solids were dissolved in water at room temperature, which is about 24 degrees or so. So I've circled 24 degrees for the yellow line and 24 degrees for the magenta line, because those are the two solids we used. So we use sodium chloride, which is solid A, and solid B was sodium nitrate. So you can compare the means or medians or however else you analyze your data for experiment 4.3. You can compare those with the values obtained from reading this graph, the magenta line and the yellow line.